What we're missing in the West is reverence with nature. We don't feel like we belong, so then we always go and take, because I don't know how to belong in my body and in the earth around me. The act of slowing down is a revolution. We revere people who suffered for their spiritual path. Actually, you can awaken in pleasure, in softness, in that union with Mother Earth. And connecting with Mother Earth in the feminine way is through our sensuality.
Tattooing the stars would be mighty fine, and might add some fire to this watery life of mine. I'd whisk them all with some ginger and lime, and then I toast to the heavens before I taste the divine. Then I would follow.
Welcome to the Rooted Healing Podcast, where stories heal with words that weave us closer to our wild nature, and we root down intimately with the landscapes around us and within us, remembering that we belong. In this episode, we're joined with Maile Kalokura, who is a somatic educator, shamanic and evolutionary astrologer, and a guide into temple healing arts. As founder of Kalokura Astrology and the Golden Rose Temple, she embodies this commitment to facilitating transformative experiences that guide people into walking through life with purpose. She is passionate about deepening self-awareness and activating a sense of aliveness in the body. Maile reminds us that life is a sensual experience and that there are feminine paths to awakening, feminine paths of initiation that are rooted in our sensuality, which is a theme close to my heart, having had many rites of passage and different lineages cross my path and lots of beautiful opportunities. And I have huge respect for them, but they have not called to me, my body and my spirit. I feel the pull to the sensuous path rather than the suffering one, having had my own initiation with suffering, with disease. Maile wrote, quote, "We have been severed from the sacredness of the body, from nature, from our sensuality, which is pure life force. It is time to bring all of our parts home, to come back into wholeness." I met Maile at a workshop she facilitated with Zulu traditional healer Piliswa Makaye, who I interviewed on the podcast a couple of episodes back. And in many ways, I was a little nervous to bring Maile onto the podcast because I've had some reservations around astrology being a theme on Rooted Healing. I had an episode way back in the beginning that I've since archived. I mean, it's still on our YouTube, all about astrology. And I suppose since then, in the years that have passed, I've become a little bit jaded by it sometimes being, in my perspective, a bit of a clutch, a bit of a distraction, and a bit of a layering between us and the animate world around us and nature and hands in the soil and really being with place. But astrology is, of course, an ancient ancestral science and practice. It's a cartography of ourselves, of place, of events, of moving, spiraling time. And when we think of animacy and the planets and the force these planets hold as we're spiraling this dance around the sun, I've come to have a huge respect for this art. And when I experience it to be rooted in the body and rooted in a way that I feel isn't a distraction, it's integrated into life here within Earth, then I have huge respect. And I recognize Maile to do that, to integrate this in a really beautiful way. To accompany this episode, Maile has offered a wonderful, prayerful meditation that she also played her drum with, and also a songful offering in that space as well. So head to patreon.com/rootedhealing to consider supporting the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you would like to access a free workshop in embodied deep ecology, you can also follow that link in the show notes. And we have 2 spots left at our signature medicine retreat later this year. So do have a gander at rootedhealing.org to see how you can gather with us, how you can engage, how you can stay connected. The beautiful music stitched into this episode is from Maile, who is linked in the show notes. And as always, if you're a musician and would like to experience your music in the Rooted Healing podcast, it would be such a joy to hear from you. I think a part of me secretly wants to be a medicine music radio host. We need a new radio channel just for that, I think, and these sorts of conversations. But I suppose podcasting has enabled us to do that. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Maile. We meandered through many different things that, if you are interested in the healing arts, I think you will find this a very nourishing episode.
Well, my heart, she rests unfolding in her own grace, and she says, listen, 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 listen. Listen, 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 listen. Listen, 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 listen.
So my name is Maile Anne Dosso Brandenburger Kalokura. Dosso is my paternal name, which means hunter in Jula, which is his tongue. From West Africa. He comes from Ivory Coast, and Brandenburger is the name of my maternal side, and it's a name of that come from a royal family from up between France and Germany. Kalokura is my professional name, which means new moon in Jula, in my father's mother tongue. I come from West Africa, from my father's side, but he came to play. He was a professional soccer player. So he came quite early in his 20s in France, and then he moved to Switzerland. So I grew up in Switzerland. And from my mother's side, I have that French and German, but also mostly 3/4 of her is from the Alps. So I'm really deeply connected to the energy of the Alps. That's where I grew up, and that's really what makes me feel alive, to be in the mountain and to work with water, and to work with that energy of, the highest point, but also how the energy of the stars come down, connecting with the earth.
Welcoming those Alps into this conversation as well. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And who do you like to call in?
So I work with the energy of the Black Panther. It has been a guardian since the past 15 years. And I think she's really important in the movement of all the women waking up right now, because that medicine in the shamanic world, the animals are aspects of us in the underworld, and she represents that reawakening of the feminine power. And she helps us to face our fear with courage, but centered in our heart, which is what is important right now, that we don't fight in this distorted masculine energy of, I'm going to be stronger than you, but more, I'm going to center in my heart. And through that, I'm going to face my fears so that I can enter the wisdom of the unknown.
Yeah, I feel so much earth reverence with your work and how you hold yourself and inhabit yourself. And so much of your work is this skyward gaze, is this astrological wisdom seeping through. And also the feminine and the sensuality. And yeah, I want to really dive into all of this. But to begin, I'm curious how your relationship with looking skyward began. Did you, growing up in the Alps, I'm assuming you had incredible sky access. So maybe we can begin there. But if you have any stories of this becoming, I'd welcome them.
Yeah. I've always been connecting with spirit in that way, even without understanding as a child. I was really connecting with nature and hearing and dreaming and looking forever in the skies, in the clouds, in the Milky Way. But it was more like in a dreaming way. It was more imagination, because we didn't have that much TV and phone at the time. The phones didn't exist. So our imagination was still really very much alive. And I think what brought me to astrology is the desire to understand myself and others. So before I started the healing path, I was a dietitian, nutritionist. I was already studying shamanism since I was 18 for myself, but I still used a Western pathway of healing, what I thought was healing in the beginning. And I work in psychiatry. So I was in the intensive care of psychiatry, and I was seeing a lot of patients come in and out. And it was, they come back all the time. It was people with eating disorder, severe eating disorder. And me, I was always trying to understand myself and studying all the different paths, because I came from a Catholic family on my mother's side, and my father's side is Muslim, even though he was not practicing. I had already those two. And then I started to study mystical and esoteric and shamanic studies through the Druid teaching in Europe and the shamanic teaching, Northern American shamanic teaching. And so when I was working, I realized patients keep on coming back, and we have what they say the best psychiatrist, and we take care of the body and the food, even though it wasn't, the hospital food, I was not really in agreement with that, but we had all of that. And what was missing was spirit. And I started to feel really stuck in my life. And I started working really young. So I was maybe 24 at that point, questioning why is a person's soul coming back into this illness? And, they're stuck in this victim consciousness, playing games with the healers in the hospitals, and we're playing game with them, and nobody is understanding what's the deeper purpose of that. And I felt spirit is missing. I felt like it's missing for me in my life because I'm lacking meaning, and it's missing for healing people. So we have wholeness. And I left my job and I went to live in Guatemala. For 8 years, I was on and off in Guatemala and studied there. And that's where I discovered astrology through someone that read my chart. And in that moment, I felt, wow, it makes so much sense. It's so much deeper and wider. And everything we take years to uncover through the psychology and therapy, now I'm seeing in one chart. I want to know more. So as I was going through my own shamanic journey, I also took the astrology journey alongside it. So I started almost 10 years ago now. And in the beginning, I was completely obsessed with it because I'm someone who likes to understand the deeper meaning of everything. And I like to understand the human psyche, life, the meaning of life, why a person, what is the origin and root cause of any type of behavior? May it be something in alignment, a gift, or something out of alignment, and the expression of an illness or imbalance in a person. And astrology, it gave me that, to look at the blueprint of someone's soul and the purpose of this incarnation, to make sense, to understand where we come from and where we are going.
I've recently started to look up a lot more and look skyward after, I think, just looking at the roots and the plants and the animals for so long, and the moss and the mushrooms. I'm really starting to look upwards to feel my belonging as a human on this earth body whirling through this vast universe. And so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts to share around humanity's loss of looking upward in many ways. Perhaps that can be woven in with sky access and what that means in terms of how we relate with the land. If we're not going outside at night and lying down on the grass, are we really gazing skyward anymore? We're so much more preoccupied with the 2D screens in our homes. And also relating this to astrology and to reading our charts, maybe, I don't know if this is too big a ask, but maybe there's a way for it to feel more embodied, to feel more visual, that we can start to really understand our place in the universe, our sense of spirit, which you've woven in here, because what an incredible story to see firsthand that lack of spirit in the Western healing paradigm. And so it's a bit of an open question. It's not really a question at all. I've just sort of offered some threads there, and feel free to ruminate with me on any of those things.
Yeah. For me, when we connect to nature, maybe the nature around on the earth or the sky, it's a way to connect with spirit. And that's maybe what we have lost, the ability to slow down and to be with nature. Because the looking is a door to feeling and to receiving. And we have learned how to look in an analytical way. So I'm looking at something outside of myself instead of I am looking at the sky and I am receiving the energy from spirit because I'm looking with my entire being. What we lost is either I look and I separate myself from what I look at, or I am looking with my whole being. It's like the shamanic vision is the opening the eye of the heart. And I'm looking and I'm receiving inspiration as I look at the sky. And I'm understanding this vastness is a force. And that force is what we call now God. You know, it's the great spirit. And there's two ways that we can take, and they are intertwined. In observing, through observing nature and the sky and the cycles on earth, we understand our place. That's how the ancient would do. They would understand the spiritual light of water. Why is water healing? Because they sat next to water and they felt and they communicated with that spirit and they understood. Same with the movement of the stars. That's a very feminine way to observe creation and find our place through the senses, and through receiving back from nature. Because I give my attention, it opens, and then the tree speaks to me, or the sky speaks to me. Astrology is a map. And, you know, in learning shamanism, I understood that everything is map. If you take a journey, a guided journey into the underworld, it's a map that we give to the mind so that the mind feels safe and contained and held, and it can open up to receive the vision from spirit and actually translate it. So astrology to me is yet another map that some people will feel resonance, and then it will help them understand why I'm here, help them understand creation. But for me, there are many different maps. I just deeply resonate with the one of astrology, and specifically the Western astrology, more than the Vedic astrology. That's what speaks to my soul. So I use it, but I don't get stuck in it either. And the way I use it, I call it shamanic evolutionary astrology, because everything that I see in the map, in that blueprint, I feel is a fertile ground for evolution. I understand myself so I can evolve, so I can free myself. And when I'm free, means I brought back all the parts of myself back home. I understand what I came with, and then I become one again with source, with creation, with God. And then I'm free. I don't need the map anymore because I'm connected again. But to understand how to connect, you can use astrology to find out what are your elemental powers, what are your gifts, how you can transform the wounding into medicine instead of staying stuck in the wound and in the trauma. And it gives that meaning for the mind to understand. But then I use that door to open to go into the body. And that's why it's also shamanic. So we use it for the evolution and for understanding and self-awareness, but also I use it for opening up a door for people to understand, okay, there's a meaning in that trauma that I experienced. I'm not going to stay stuck here. Now I'm going to bring it into embodiment. I have an understanding on the mental level, and now we bring it into the physical level. So I may give a ritual that is in alignment with what comes up in the chart. I know they will resonate more with one aspect or one element more. And then I bring that and weave a ritual for them to bring that understanding that we talked about on the mental into the energetic and the embodiment.
Yeah, this sense of bringing it into the body and almost this feminine receptivity to receive nature through the body, to really see nature with that eye of the heart that you said. I know you've said something like life is a sensual experience. And reading that brought a snippet of a poem to mind, one of my favourite poets, Laura Weaver. She's another facilitator. And she wrote, "There is an intimacy with life you are offered. It requires everything of you, even the surrender of the story of the life you thought was yours to live, even the opening to the story of a life that would bring miracles and set your heart on fire. And the intimacy in this poem is with a capital I. It's like there's something about this reverent intimacy. Life is a sensual experience. So can you talk about this, how this has shown up in your evolution and your becoming, this intimacy we are offered, but for so many people, we're somehow denying ourselves this. And from there, just wisdom on how we can invoke more sensuous, more intimate lives.
Mm-hmm. That's such a deep, touching subject to me. I feel like naturally I've always been a very sensual being, and also I experienced a lot of trauma around it. And I was raised in a very masculine warrior energy, which is why it's funny that on my paternal side, our name means hunter. Like we come from a line of healers, but also warriors and hunters. The distortion I receive from Africa and the wounding that experienced my father, it manifested in us having to suppress our feminine nature and to fit in and to survive, as a child, because it feels like surviving on the psychological level of the child. I had to become really strong, which is also a part of me. So it was not that hard to push myself. And I receive a very distorted relationship with pain. I understood that if I'm in pain, I should push more. And I brought that into everything into my life. Even in the beginning, when I started working with women, I was still pushing myself without really realizing. And I think when I moved to Guatemala, everything shifted in my life. And I was surrounded by nature so much that I came into my body. And when you come down into the body, you start to feel everything that was stored there. So it was like a few years of releasing and moving through difficult challenges, but I still had a very strong masculine energy in me. And that's what brought me all the way to the African initiation that I did. I did it until the end because I had that ability to push myself beyond limits. And what happened was I realized everything I imagined that is spiritual and, sacred and, because the indigenous knowledge, we sometimes idealize it a little bit. And then I realized, no, the distortion, the patriarchal distortion I was fighting in the beginning is everywhere. In most of the spiritual paths I have experienced, maybe when I was in Central America, in South America, maybe when I was in Africa, it's everywhere. And it's not the way. And there was something inside of me telling me it is not the way. And I had started for years that feminine awakening in my body, but that distortion was still there. So I had to leave it to the extreme, to completely burn down, to completely broke my body, to realize, whoa, something needs to change. And actually, awakening can be a sensual experience, and it can be pleasurable, and it can be easy. It does not have to be hard. It does not have to be pushing yourself and sacrificing yourself. Yeah, that was the breaking point for me to realize, whoa, I was still carrying that, even though I was already working with women. I had not seen how much of that distortion I carried, and it broke me down completely. And when I rebuilt myself with a lot of gentleness and slowing down and sensuality. And it brought me to a deeper understanding of what it means to be a woman in this society that we're in, and to understand on a universal level as well, because I have been connecting with so many different cultures. And that's my Sagittarius moon. I am fluid in many different cultures and spiritual paths, but then I make it a whole and I look at it and I see, okay, the female needs to awaken. And that's why the Black Panther also came in my dreams, in my journeys, in visions. Like she was the main guide teaching me how to embrace power in a feminine way. So I would say the act of slowing down is a revolution, you know, and shifting that belief that, you know, we revere people who suffered for their spiritual path into actually you can awaken in pleasure, in softness, in that union with Mother Earth. And connecting with Mother Earth in the feminine way is through our sensuality. That way we completely relax and the nervous system relax and the portal to the goddess opens. Once you have the capacity to feel safe in the body and let the body open, I feel like spending time in nature resets your nervous system already. But spending time in nature in silence, not activating the mind too much. It's about when I go in nature, I sing and I look and I touch and I smell and I use all of my senses. And in that way, I'm communicating with the earth through the senses. And I will rarely be speaking a prayer. I will be dancing a prayer. I will go in front of the water and I will start to dance. Or I will lay on a rock and I will sing to the rock. And using that more feminine pathways to open up with nature, that's when I receive visions and information back to me.
Yeah, thank you for giving some visceral examples. It's so beautiful to drop into these experiences. And I think for a lot of people, not always accessible because it does depend on how safe we feel in nature, like you say, and what nature we have access to. But bit by bit, following those breadcrumbs back to those spaces and places where we can feel fully alive, that eros in the land. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your initiation in Africa. That really intrigues me. I mean, I've got many friends who follow the Camino Rojo, which is going up the mountain and fasting. And for me, it feels like quite a masculine path in the terms of putting the body through so much. And I haven't felt drawn to it, especially because I spent a lot of time healing and nourishing a body suffering from autoimmunity. So the thought of kind of pushing to those edges is actually really daunting on my health. So, I mean, I'd love to hear about what that initiation was for you, and just two things there, that there is, on one hand, sacrifice to access the deeper states, and on the other hand, a much more nourishing, softening, sensuous path. So maybe you could speak a little bit more about that.
Yes. I want to understand the roots of traditions because I value tradition and I value ancestral knowledge, but also I have that desire to feel the unity into everything and to understand all the different paths. And my sun is next to Uranus, which makes it complicated because I follow tradition, I rebel. I break free. I follow tradition, I rebel, I break free. And that was a pattern in all the lines that I studied, even in my work, in my life. And now I'm transforming it into a gift. Okay, I'm gathering all that knowledge and I'm sharing it in a way that is more universal and applicable in a practical way for everybody to be able to access. But I will go and do the research. That's the impulse that I have, that I followed. So I had several shamanic trainings before that, but what happened with the African was I'm living in Switzerland. I'm comfortable. Then I have that nudge of let me go and learn shamanism more deeply, because I started with a Swiss healer, because we have a lot of Swiss healers, which is another interesting story, maybe for later. But in the Alps, there's a lot of very specific Swiss healers. And I moved to Central America, and my desire was, let me learn shamanism because that's what speaks to my soul. We need to connect with nature, like God needs to be in the elements. For years that I was there, I was brought to different medicine paths. I never looked for them. It always came. I was in a complete free flow with life at that moment. And every time, every journey, every dream, I end up in Africa. And because my relationship with my father was unloving and also I had trauma with it, and wounded with it, I rejected the African part. I always liked the music and the stories, but I wanted nothing to do over there. So I pushed it away and I was like, no, I'm following my path. I'm learning shamanism. I'm in the Amazon. I'm in the Andean mountain or wherever, you know. I'm working with cacao and singing. That's completely my path. Every time I would go to bed, I would dream that I'm going on a plane and I want to go to Europe and I land in Africa. Or I would be in Guatemala and I would see those warriors with spears staring at me. And I felt like I'm hunted. There's no way, like that must be black magic. That's what I thought. So I pushed, but I'm dreaming since I'm a child. I'm having a lot of dreams and also a lot of nightmares because I have a lot of karmic things and ancestral things to clear. And when I would go into medicine journeys, we would be with Northern or Southern American shamans, and I would hear African drums. And that lasted for years, until a point that when I was training to work with cacao and sound alchemy, that was a really deep training, and everything started to open up way more. So that's when I started to be able to see things with my eyes open, and I would see ancestors coming and ancient tribes, but also tribes that would come from the stars, and that were completely different colors and patterns. And I was awake. I was not in a dream or in a journey anymore. So I felt, whoa, what's happening? And I talked with my teacher at the time, and he said, I don't know how to support you in this, but I think you should contact those people who were African sangomas from South Africa, but they were American. And that's when I had the first reading, and they told me, you definitely have a calling, and they will come in your dreams, your guardians. And they were already coming, and I was still rejecting, like, no, I want nothing to do with this. I waited 4 years, and it was 4 hard years, because in that tradition, you have something called the calling sickness. So you get really sick in different ways that are connected to what you're supposed to heal. So for me, it was linked with the feminine energy and the womb, and it was also with the mental, the psychological, or, you know, because of all the nightmares and all the darkness I would tune into in the dream, and I felt attacked, but I wasn't understanding. It's teaching me how to transform it into empowering, controlling, and strengthening your mind so that you can continuously connect with God, with love, with light, and move through the thought patterns that tend to control humanity, you know, a lot of us. So I felt it to the extreme to understand how it works. So then I can help someone who is struggling with negative thoughts or self-judgment or criticism or deeper, darker thoughts as well. And when it reached a certain tipping point, I felt like, okay, I have to surrender to this because nobody else can help me. I would go see different healers. They didn't know. So I felt like the only option I have now is to reconnect with Africa. And my first opening was entering into Afro-Brazilian practices called Umbanda. And it opened something up for me because it felt more safe, I imagine, because I could connect through being in Switzerland as well when I would be there in the summer. And it was a bridge of Western and African. And I discovered that cosmology, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard and felt and experienced, because now we would embody the forces of nature. And it gave me such a deeper understanding of how to work with nature for healing. And so I stayed for 2-3 years studying there with them until I reached a point where I felt I need to go to the next step, because this is very contained and I need it to be part of my everyday work. And I was already working with shamanism, cacao, sound, astrology. And I wanted to bring that African wisdom more into it because it spoke to me way more than any other path I have studied. It was such a deep, beautiful reverence to life. And I finished that, and by lots of synchronicities or spirit forcing that path, who knows, at some point I accepted to do the Sangoma initiation. And when I started, I knew nothing because it's not my culture. I come from West Africa. I didn't know how the process is, and it wasn't explained. It was very mysterious, but because I had that sense of it's okay to sacrifice for something greater, and that way I will heal, and that way I will be aligned with my path. And that's what I'm about. For me, all my work is about aligning with our destiny. So it was really important for me And I felt like I'm just going to do it. And the way it's done is very strict and very masculine, which I didn't expect, because they keep on talking about the great mother and the goddess and nature. But the actual process is very disturbing in the way I received it, because the way I received it had a lot of distortion. You know, it was not the pure way. So I can only speak about my experience. And that's also was beautiful to meet Piliswa, because she helped me understand a lot of things that were done wrong and how to rectify. Because she received her initiation in another way through her family. There was no power game because it was her family, you know. I will enter into a whole world realizing, okay, there's a lot of power games in the African spirituality, in the way I entered into it. And I entered into that because it was linked with the karmic lesson I had to learn with power. Having Pluto in Scorpio, in the house of Scorpio, in the 8th house, there's a soul desire to understand power through the distortion of power, you know, and transforming the shadows into light. So I understand why it had to go that way. The whole process was very painful and sometimes abusive as well. And I feel like my mistake was my body was telling me it's not right. And I played that trauma that I had of, let's not listen to the body, because the spiritual authority here knows better than me. And in the end, I learned a lot of things, and I did learn tools that I'm integrating in my work still, because it's just the ancestral wisdom on healing that is universal. And I have opened up so much into the dream space that I could see a lot of what was happening in my lineage and where I came into, what did I incarnate into. I could do a lot of integration of the ancestral healing and the astrology. And that's why I merged the two of them together now. But my true initiation was to be able to spot power games and to say no and to trust in the wisdom of my body. So the true initiation was more after. It was like living, you know, and healing myself and bringing myself back into health and alignment and making sense of what happened. That was the true initiation for me. So I feel like I was brought into this because of my ancestry, because like I said, I come from a long line of healers in Africa, but there was a lot of distortion in that line as well. I think I had to do it the old way because of that Capricorn tradition energy. And then I had to break free because of that Uranian energy that is next to my sun and understand how to integrate all of that.
Wow, yeah. Thank you for that story, because I'm particularly enchanted by the dreams that come to us on the healing path, and those ancestral dreams feel so visceral and deep. And I crave the dreams that have come to me and been so clearly guiding have helped me make huge radical decisions in my life. And at the same time, a lot of my dreams are just so much noise. And you've mentioned dreams a few times. You've mentioned nightmares, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on nightmares. You said something about this sort of karmic processing with this ancestral trauma, and a lot of the work feels really rooted in this intergenerational healing that we have to do in this lifetime, and how that's shown up in the body as well. And so what are your thoughts when we're being brought nightmares, a lot of nightmares? What would be the guidance? What would be the insight there?
So nightmares, for me, I'm saying that it was karmic and ancestral, because the type of nightmares I was having as a young child, you can't imagine. We didn't have TV, so I could never have seen that anywhere. And it was horrific. So that's how I understood, okay, it's not just something I picked up in this life consciously. I spent years and years understanding and analyzing and going really deep, because I studied not only with the African past, work a lot with dream, but before that I was already working with dreaming because I studied with the Toltec teacher, who are the dream walkers. I would spend a lot of time analyzing my dreams and trying to understand and shift and work with them in my reality as well, until I understood that I'm putting a lot of attention, like too much attention into it. The lesson for me personally was to overcome fear. Because when I'm not in that frequency of fear and I don't generate that frequency of fear in my life, because of those thoughts that come in, the intrusive thoughts and the patterns in the thinking of the collective, then I don't dream like that. It was teaching me about the vibration I'm living in. And when I'm going down, because I can feel when I'm taking into the underworld, I usually start with the sleep paralysis. If I surrender, I will come out through my feet, and then I enter into that lower dimension where everything is really dark and slow. And you are in that energy of fear and darkness. And so I feel like in a way, my path was also to be initiated through that. For me, it was about facing fears, which again bring the deeper understanding of why the Black Panther is walking with me and teaching me, because I had to understand how to face fear and how to face darkness. So there's many techniques you can put into place that I have learned, but that I don't really use now anymore. Because now for me, it's more when I'm awake and I have that feeling of fear, how to transmute that feeling of fear into love and courage. Now it's more on that energetic level that I personally work, but I did learn other techniques about how you can become conscious in your dream and how you can shift the energy inside the dream. How when you wake up, we store that energy of fear into our bones. So you can also visualize energies and with the element of fire moving through all of your bones and then going down into the earth. Or some other teacher would say, when you wake up, you smudge and you shift your pillows. And those were all techniques I would do, but wouldn't shift because it's a deeper initiation. And for me, it was at some point just saying, stop. I don't want to learn that way anymore. I have learned enough. I was in a way keeping myself stuck in that because I was putting so much attention to those nightmares.
Yeah, it's resonating so much. I've definitely also entered those realms, and at the same time, that sleep paralysis, hypnagogic state can also lead me to really blissful vibrational places. And so it's like this, it really resonates hearing you say it's about alchemizing that fear into love and courage, because I absolutely, if I'm in an unfamiliar place and I enter that state, I can very easily feel a fear of like, oh, I don't know the energies here and what's going to come through. But actually, when I've been in places that I've felt really safe and really connected to nature, and I have entered that state, it's always felt beautiful. It's so interesting hearing you speak about it.
Everything is a reflection of what's happening inside of yourself. So once you have that understanding and you enter a place of fear, you can shift that energy through understanding the emotional alchemy within yourself. And that's why we practice during the day, coming back to the heart, trusting that I'm held because I am connecting with my divinity. And once you do that during the day, at some point, your dream body will do it as well. Because once you shift into the dream, everything shifts around because we're all powerful. And you can go into those higher space because actually we dream in all levels at the same time. But maybe I'm conscious down there because there's a lesson down there and I can shift it. And then I can go into those places where everything is bright and colorful and light. You know, you have this sacred geometry and your guide.
Yeah, I love it. I could talk about this so much with you. Yeah, I'd love to loop us back around. You mentioned about the Swiss healers. That's tell me about them.
The energy of Switzerland is interesting. Switzerland is the center of Europe, and Europe is the heart of the planet. It's at the center. Especially in Switzerland, when you have the Alps starting, it was the collision of Africa and Europe. So when we go in the Alps, we have stones and minerals that come from Africa and some that come from Europe, which is interesting. And I had a few dreams where I would wake up in the center of the Alps and there would be whales flying, and they would tell me, do you realize you're at the bottom of the ocean, but you're at the highest point also? Because it's the memory of this inside the heart of the earth coming back up. So you have that energy in Switzerland. Now we had Druids, we had the Celts, and they were called the people of the gold, the one living in Switzerland, and they were exterminated really early, and they flew to France, to England, and then in England is where they stayed alive the longest, so we have more record over there, and in Switzerland kind of like disappeared, but it stayed in the mountain, that understanding of healing. Because when you are sitting in high energy point, it awakens something in your body. Then the witch hunt started in Switzerland, ended in Switzerland. It's quite intense. The last witch was also killed here. So they had to shift and integrate religion to survive. And all the ancestral prayers of Switzerland, now a lot of them includes saints, our prayers to Mother Mary, our prayers to Jesus, but the core of it is about secret energy patterns for healing. And so they have something called magnetism. We call them magnétiseurs, and they heal with passing the hands over you. That's one of the specific things. There's the one who are called rebouteux, who will move your bones and bring you back into health through moving the bones. And then you have the one called the secret keeper. And now it's syncretism with the Christian prayers. But those secrets, they help to do things like, when you have a high burn, they stop the burn, stop the pain, and let your body heal from that burn. When you have a hemorrhage and you're bleeding out, they can stop the blood just through prayers and from long distance. So even when I was working in the hospital, they had the number of these people. They just don't say it. But usually in the emergency care, a lot of Swiss hospitals, they will have numbers just in case, and they call them. And then they take care of all the skin issues. If you have warts or things like this, you can call them and they do the prayer and it fall off.
Wow.
It's really interesting because they also are really connected with plants and healing, because the herbs with the energy of the mountain are really strong. So they heal with plants and there's a lot of herbalists. And I have not encountered in other European country yet people who would do that, because it's so specific. Maybe a little bit in France, because in places of France, you have that border. It's the same people,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting. And my great-grandmother was healing just with cold water and clay and herbs from the Alps. So everybody would come to receive healing from the village, because they were really isolated up in the Alps. And she would just use cold water from the rivers and clay, and that's it, because there was no doctors really when you would be up there. She ended up with a lot of depression and also psychological disorder, because she was so unhappy, and with that, the religion, again, it was so tough. The religion in the Alps was brainwashing people to control them. But she had that gift, but the gift couldn't completely fully express because she was such a religious person, but more in the suffering aspect of religion. But the gift was still there.
Wow. Yeah, gosh, I had no idea about any of that. That's really potent. And this sense of the Alps being this emergence, and your dream with the whales is so powerful. Whales have come to me once in a dream, and it was one of the most powerful dreams I ever had. It's like the spirit of the ocean, really. Oh. You've spoken a lot about this emergence of multicultural belonging, multicultural heritage, and I'm imagining syncretic altars of, I don't know, a totem from those lands and a tradition from those lands, and this sense of welcoming and not getting too indoctrinated into a specific lineage. And that this is a whole can of worms we could open, but I think a lot of people are trying to find their feet with this, with our own multicultural heritage, but also not even just multicultural heritage, the teachers we find along the path in faraway lands, and then coming home and not fully knowing how to integrate all of it. And so maybe you can offer some sense of the healing path, the fact that we are all indigenous to this earth, that wisdom is everywhere. I'm quoting you. But also the fact that it is nuanced. So I don't know if there's anything you'd like to impart here. Maybe also cacao comes in here, because you work with cacao and such a beautiful medicine. And also I feel has really been demanded across the world. And in many ways, now that there are plantations, it's like a spirit's retreating back to the places of origin. It's like, no, don't monoculture me. That's not what I want. And so maybe that can come into this part of our dialogue as well.
I feel that because I have such clear multicultural origin in my own blood, I always had to merge cultures together. So that's why I have this opening to merging more culture now. And because of that Uranian energy inside of me, which rules my destiny and my purpose in my son, I am always trying to look at the universal truth in everything. I feel like what we're missing in the West is reverence with nature. We don't feel like we belong. So then we always go and take, because I don't know how to belong in my body and in the earth around me. In the beginning, the Indian philosophies, it came to the West and it gave us that for the people who were seeking. It gave us what was missing because we lost it in the West. And then the shamanic path of the Americas, it became available as well. So we went there. And that's also why I went there, because I was like, I don't know where I can learn how to connect with nature. So and I was young at the time and I was like, where? It's over there. So I'm going to go over there. I didn't even think I could connect through Africa at that time, just because Africa was seen as, you can still see a lot of what the colonization put on Africa to suppress its power and to suppress its spirituality. We don't even want to see the gold of wisdom that is there. So let's go study shamanism somewhere else, and I did that in the beginning, in my early 20s. And I learned a lot, and it gave me keys to understand spirit, to understand my place, and to understand my relationship with nature. So then every summer I would come back in Switzerland and I would go in the Alps and I would apply what I learned in other countries, but here to try to listen here. But I would still not find information from people that much in those years. Now there is more information about what is our story here. And I feel like I found that when I went to England, actually. And I was like, wow, they're way more connected to these Western ancestral ways. So I received a little bit from there as well. With Africa, I feel like I learned a lot about understanding how to work magic and ritual to serve a person's healing through the forces of nature, because Africa is the root chakra of the earth. So we harness that primordial power and force of the earth and learn how to use it for healing and for connection. I honor all the lineage I have worked with and learned through, but everything that I learn, I bring it into how can we apply it to live better, to be more loving, to be more kind, to live together and to heal and to find purpose and to feel, happiness in our life. So that's why I feel like maybe I act as a translator, because I can understand the spiritual path, and I will go and live in the Amazon, and I will go and initiate in Africa, but then I translate it for people around. Just because I enjoy teaching. It's just what makes me feel nourished. I like to do that. So I don't mind doing that. But for me, what I'm truly seeking is that universal truth within everything. And I feel like a lot of people, they don't really immerse themselves, and then they come back and apply from a really Western state of mind. And they use it because they haven't understood the belonging and the embodied feeling of I belong with Mother Earth, and those are my brothers and sisters, and nature is my mother, and I'm a child of spirit. Then I will, from that collective wound, I will go and try to understand, and I will take, and then I will apply it for my own profit. So I'm not thinking in a universal and collective way. And there's danger, we can say, in that. A lot of people talk now of cultural appropriation, but I feel like going into those talks, it also generates a lot of separation and conflict. Because in the end, like you say, we all are the children of the earth. So I feel like a soul will resonate with the type of medicine for a reason. And it may be from their ancestral lineage, or it may be from a soul connection from other lifetime. And that's fine. Whatever way you find, whatever shamanic map you use to find your purpose, connect with nature and live in harmony with nature, giving back to life is fine. That's how I see it. As long as you respect people, because when you do something out of alignment, you feel it and everybody feel it. You can ignore it, but it creates a disharmony in your life. And then you're in disharmony with nature, and you're in disharmony with how you interact with life. You know, the way I work with cacao, for example, in the beginning, so it started maybe 11 years ago, I connected with cacao for the first time. And it was such a deep meeting. I cried for 6 hours the first time I met that medicine. And then when I would live in Guatemala, I would sit twice a week. I would go to ceremonies with different teachers and Mayan elders, but also other teachers that are not from that tradition. And I would meet, how does it feel in my body? What is it evoking? What is it awakening? I was trying to understand how that plant heals. And because I had the shamanic training also, I was reading that plant from that perspective. So I always learned the traditional way, and I also explore through my own understanding through observing and experimenting. And then when I started to bring cacao in Switzerland, there was no cacao at the time. So it was very innocent in a way. And then it started to grow and grow and grow. And now it's everywhere. And I feel it's everywhere because people long to reconnect with their heart and with nature. And because we don't really know how to do it by ourselves, this is a tool that we can use, that cacao alchemy. And at the same time, it is exposing how we are misusing medicines from the earth as well. Is both. So I don't have a judgment really. I'm just encouraging people, get to know where it comes from, take the time to sit with it and really feel it and actually meet that spirit instead of just repeating what you have heard. It's a plan to connect with the heart. It's so much deeper. So much deeper. What is the most important to me with cacao is understanding how can I be in a harmonious communication with the plant, and regularly ask, how is the plant serving my purpose to serve life? Instead of, I'm just going to bring cacao with everything and I don't really understand where it comes from, so I don't understand the consciousness of the plant that much, and I just use it so more people come because it feels exotic. It's all about if I'm in my heart when I do something or not. When I use a wisdom from another country, why am I doing it? Am I doing it to show off or to say, oh, well, I have been there, so look at what I can do? Or am I using it because they opened a door for me to tune into a rock? So now I'm going to tune into a rock, but it's going to be a rock in the Alps. And then I'm going to show people how to do the same. So it becomes universal wisdom of remembrance. Because we sometimes need, the Indian or the shamanic or the African past because it's still alive. It was not completely eradicated. Or the Druid way also is still alive. Yeah. So we sometimes need that in order to open up the doors of remembrance in our body. So then we can find our own way. And I think that's totally fine to go and study in other countries and then come back and find, what is my place? Do I want to live there, or am I called to live here? And if I'm called to live here, how am I going to use that wisdom to bring harmony in my life and to serve life in my own unique way, which is aligned with my destiny? I say, for a closing word, I would say, let's remember that it's also awakening the God within. It's not just going back to nature. We go back to nature because we are part of her, so we were never separate. So the body needs to feel part so that it can balance and harmonize itself. But it's also awakening our sovereignty and awakening the God within, and merging spirit and matter is what we're here to do, because we're entering into the age of Aquarius, which is another huge topic. I won't go deep into it, but entering the age of Aquarius is about understanding that I am a spark of the divine and I am unique, but I'm also part of the whole. So I'm going to find my own unique path, which speak about what we were talking before. The age of Aquarius is not about I'm following and devoting myself to one lineage anymore. And it's just that. It's about finding my own unique way to awaken to my God self. And there's going to be so many different unique ways to awaken, where we go and remember the ancestral, and then we integrate into our body and we find our own unique expression of that. So as we're moving into that age of Aquarius, there needs to be a merging of the divine into the matter. There needs to be a realization that I am that expression of the divine, and it's moving me and it's guiding me, so I can trust and I can surrender to that. Nature is helping us to do that because it's the planet Earth that is awakening. It's not just me. It's the planet Earth is awakening, and we're serving the planet Earth awakening and raising her consciousness, because we're just a neuron of her.
To drink the stars would be mighty fine.
Head to rootedhealing.org to explore our in-person ceremonial gatherings, online courses and workshops, all tending, healing and connecting our inner and outer landscapes. With gratitude, your host, Veronica Stanwell. Thanks for listening.
Then I would follow my footsteps in the dark. My mind, she's halfway to the moon, and the stars, they sing to me a brighter space. Well, my heart, she rests unfolding in her own grace, and she says, listen, 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 listen. Listen, 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 listen. Listen, 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 listen.